Glad to have you back, and you're still watching Nigeria Decides. This time around, our focus is on the Nigerian Police Force and the way forward. What do you think about the Nigerian Police? What do you think can be done to improve the force? Well, share your thoughts with us and solutions as well on our social media platform at Plus TV Africa. That's on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Joining us now in our studio, we have Tanwa Ashiru, security consultant. Good evening. As well as Ogene Boruwe, soldier management consultant. Good evening.
Thank you so much, gentleman and lady, for joining us. We've actually been discussing this with the earlier guests who were with us. Now we were still trying to find out what the major issue with the Nigerian police is. So let me get your thoughts, Taya.
Okay, so there's several different issues all across the board. And one thing I always tell people is that when you see a team that's not working, you have to look at the leader. Part of it has to do with leadership. How committed is the leader to make sure that whatever targets they have, whatever goals they have, whatever the focus is, they're actually meeting it. And that has been the problem. So number one, let's look at funds. I know we keep saying there's not enough money, there's not enough money. But the truth is the amount of money that's been going to the police has quadrupled over the last 5 years. So if the amount of money budgeted for the police keeps increasing, but yet it's not enough, then we have to think about the current structure. Meaning, with the amount of money we have right now, running the police force the way it is not going to work. We need to focus and realize certain things and admit certain things
Does
first.
more money mean more money to go around? Because of course we know that it is increasing and we also have inflation. Are we also putting that into account?
I mean, part of it is also accountability. So the truth is you can keep throwing money into something, but you actually won't even see a difference if it's not being spent properly and being properly accounted for. And I'll give you an example with regards to money. Apparently, each police station, we actually heard a commissioner of police here in Lagos at one point that was saying it, each police station gets about 33K or so to function every month. 33,000. How do you fuel your vehicles? How do you power? I don't know how much you pay for electricity, but it costs a lot of money. Fuel for the generator, all sorts of things. How are they supposed to function like that? So it's currently not working.
And earlier in our discussion, we're also looking at the appointment of the IGP as well, in determining how well we have a good leadership. What's also your thoughts on that as well?
Taking it from where she started, talking about the police and the leadership, I think the challenge we have with the police today in Nigeria is professionalism and our political structure. The police, when they go out of this country for international engagements, they come out on tops. Nigerian police, United Nations, OAU, wherever, that is the AU, African Union, they come out on tops. But why here, it goes down to the challenge of the leader. Because the police, they are not professional, they are not independent, they are still subject to the federal, who appointed them, the person in power. So, but rather than be independent to serve the people, they serve the person in power.
Now,
so it's not as if the police are not...
Now, we're counting down to next week's election as well. We've raised the issue of funding. Well, some of those fundings have come a little late, and training is also important. So quickly, Tawa, take us through some of the training they've had, because in our previous discussion, we said, well, the recruitment process of some of these officers is pretty more shady, if we could use that word. So now that we're counting down to the election and the IGP has said, well, they would be professional and they'll be neutral. What are the trainings that we're supposed to be having, should have had, and are having to ensure that they deliver come February 16 and March 2nd?
Okay, so part of the reason, in fact, now where I'm dressed and being here, we just came from some training we were doing for the Lagos State Security Agency. So all of them, you're looking at LASMA, the Lagos State Environment Corps, the Lagos State Neighborhood Watch, and so on. So we're training all of them. NSCDC, in fact, is also involved. And we have to show them a couple of things with regards to the elections. Number one, they need to understand the trends and the patterns, the situation as it is. It's a volatile season we're in. Number two, identifying the risks and the threats. Number three, conflict resolution. You're going to be there. There are going to be people who are angry and going to start fighting. What are you going to do? So part of what we're training them is how to do risk identification. How do you identify when things are about to get escalated? When you see a group of people coming, how do you report? How do you profile? When you see certain people, can you profile, possibly look at it and figure out whether or not they may pose a threat? And so these are some of the skills skill set that we've been training them on ahead of the elections.
Mr. Soje, don't you think this training is coming a little too late? There's just about a few days to the election. Even if it were held last month, that's still late in my own assessment.
It can never be too late in this case. It's better late than never. Better than never. And, it's a project. This training specific is not for their usual daily operations. This is like she said. This is an election that comes once in a while, and they pose their own peculiar risks. People coming together at certain points, generally and across board.
But the question is about the impact of this training. Too short a time is my question, don't you think?
I want to accept your position. I think like, it was better late than never, because Nigerian police, they are, to an extent, in my own assessment, I've dealt with them, I'm involved with them. Maybe not what I should say on TV now. They are qualified personnel. If the leadership today says this is the direction to go, they all follow. That is why when we hear that an IG comes and said no checkpoint, and if it happens, you are going to be sanctioned, it cascades and across board. So the training that he has come, I'm happy it came rather late, but they will be able to handle the situation if and only if they see that there is going to be independence. They are not going to pander to anybody, any government, or any big man's position.
You're welcome back to Nigeria Decides on Plus TV Africa. We're back and the show continues. Definitely we will continue our conversation on the state of the Nigerian Police Force. We still have with us Yetunde Adekule, National President, World Changes Youth Initiative, and as well Soje Oyenere Buruwe, Management Consultant. Thank you so much for being with us.
Ladies and gentlemen, now we were having conversations about the preparedness of the police ahead of the election. Now, one of the issues that we've also seen is the fact that we don't have enough of the police force taking center stage when we're looking at elections. Now, Tanwa, do you expect that we'll still see a large number of military men to support if the police are not just enough?
Yes, and not just military. You're going to see the military, you're going to see the police, you're going to see all state parastatals as well that will be there. So in the case of Lagos, for instance, you will see LASMA, you see FRSC. Anyone who has a uniform is likely going to come out and support, or rather will help out with security and stability and peace on that day. And the reason why they have to is because you have a bunch of young people who, some of them are focused on causing chaos and violence. So you need to make sure you have ample number of servicemen or law enforcement that will be able to combat that as well.
Talking about that, we see that elections cannot necessarily be void of disorderly conduct. But we don't see enough of arrests when we're looking at that, because we see little breakout of violence. We're not expecting any large outbreak of violence, but in the little pockets here and there, we don't have enough arrest and there's no prosecution. So those who perpetrate such acts believe that, well, it's business as usual.
I mean, definitely. We already know this. A lot of criminals get away with a lot of their crimes in Nigeria. But we were even talking about something, about that offline with regards to even the prisons. Right now, they're overcrowded. In fact, even in terms of training, when we're training them, one of the things that we've been advocating for is joint training exercises. So there's nothing wrong with a LASMA or FRSC person also doing joint exercises with the police or with the military, so they can learn some skills. How do you detain, a large group of people who are maybe causing chaos, and just detain them in terms of being able to stabilize them, put them in a corner until things settle off, and then you decide what next to do. So sometimes they need this additional training on what to do. How do you profile? How do you find the people? How do you arrest them? How do you detain them? How do you enroll them into the system if we have one? And, you know, these are sort of things that need to be learned. But with regards to just arresting, I mean, again...
And prosecuted.
Well, that's also, we have issues with the legal and judicial system as well in the country.
Before we move on, I would like to take you back to a question I asked earlier about where we are now. Are we making progress? Is this the first time we're having trainings, or is it customary for us to train our police officers before elections?
So interestingly, one of the things that we found in this election season is we've seen that a lot of NGOs have been trying to help. They've been putting a lot of programs together to help train, build capacity in the men and women who are going to be involved in trying to help make sure that it's a peaceful election. And in fact, and that's part of, you know, why I'm here, I run the Center for Peace and Conflict Resolution for the Chris Ogbanjo Foundation, for instance. And so we've been training them on conflict resolution. How do you go in there? How do you mediate on issues, making sure that it's a win-win situation? And one of the things also we've been telling them is the need for them to not interfere. I know that was one of the questions you had asked, and it's important. We've been hammering it over and over again. Their jobs, they're not there to actually sway any votes or to do any of that. You're actually there to make sure that you help and you maintain peace. So you're helping if there's conflict, you can report it, you can get the right people to come and intervene, and you just help out any citizens. If someone gets injured, you know that you're first response, and things like that. So there's been a lot of training in this particular elections, but we grow. We always grow. As they see what happens in this election, we learn from the mistakes, and we know that 4 years later, we're supposed to emerge better.
Okay, now let's look at the redeployment of senior police officers as well. Well, that has also come with its own criticism that there have been some, there are some political undertones to this, and we are saying we're supposed to be professional and neutral. What do you think really about all of these redeployments?
Yes, sometimes even when there are no...
Or state to be specific.
Even when there are no... I don't understand the undertone with the Kwara State Commissioner of Police currently and the current Commissioner of Police. But if I understood that, I will get to that. Even if there are no deployments at this time, when you want to have such projects, you find out that people who have been on ground may either have been too familiar or too familiar with the people in the states they serve. So it's also good to move them to various different locations where they will act neutral. But it's because sometimes there are undertones, there have been plans about such things, people are moved to where they have interest. Ordinarily, in the service, when you have a challenge, it's better to take somebody that is fresh to a place who will run the process afresh without having knowledge of anybody on ground. But that is not to say, given the example of Kwara State, that because the current commissioner was an aide, a CSO to a top politician, and now the state where he's posted to is also another top politician in the other party, there is likelihood that you are sent there to either protect our interest or guide against the interest of that person coming to the fore.
Do you think they are going to be neutral in their disposition and their dispensation of the duties, ensuring that every single police personnel is neutral and impartial? Over 50 police officers are redeployed.
Well, I'm sure they will try and know their election monitors, people who are going to be watching, external people who will be also watching as well, just to make sure that everyone is conforming. So they can only try. Now, we know this is Nigeria. We look at history. What has the history been in the case of elections? Have our security agencies typically been neutral all through? Sometimes they have, sometimes they haven't. What we're hoping for, though, is that this time around, if we find people who are not, we're able to document them. Thank God for social media today that puts the power in the hands of people who will be at the polling booth and the polling unit. I don't know if you've seen this, but there was even a video, for instance, that's been going viral, where there was an INEC official, and say there are 300 people registered in that place, and he only had 100 ballots. So they asked him, they said, well, where are the remaining 200? He said, well, they only gave him 100. Well, that means that voting cannot take place in this place, because the other 200, even if, for instance, everybody here votes APC, and that's 100 ballots, but there's still 200 elsewhere. So it doesn't matter if everybody votes one party in this place, the 200 ballots are out there that can still come back and then declare another party the winner. So these are some of the issues. I think with social media there in the hands of people, we'll be able to document it. And if there are people who are doing what they're not supposed to, hopefully we can capture that and the law can be taken out against them.
Now, let me come back to you, Sojay. One of the things that acting Inspector General of Police did immediately he assumed office was this deployment of commissioners of police. Now, one of the arguments advanced against that move was that coming at this critical time, that the interests of the ruling party may be just what the commissioners may be protecting. And a lot of people on the other side have also said that it is customary for this to happen just before elections. Now, when you talked about the Kwara situation, you also spotlighted that in Nigeria, why is it that there's always that clause that interests of the ruling party may just be what this is about, even though we know that it shouldn't be so?
Yeah, it takes us to the core of the issue of our true federalism, where the police thinks that they should be loyal to the government in power. But the police is quite autonomous and independent, this issue will not arise. And because if the rule of law is also thrown to the dogs in our environment, so that the police IG thinks that if I don't do the will of the bidding of the government in power, who appointed me, even though I'm supposed to be autonomous and independent, if the rule of law is jettisoned, then I'll be in jeopardy.
Now, let's quickly talk about the call for state police. And now, according to the Deputy Senate President of the Senate, Ike Ekweremadu, he said Nigeria is the only federal system in the world that operates a unitary police system. Now, this is talking about a call for state police. What do you make of this argument, and how true or does this paint our reality?
Okay, so I am also a proponent of state police, and here's why. We monitor and we track all the trends and the patterns of crime across Nigeria. And you find out that the crimes differ depending on where you are. The needs differ depending on where you are. So there are some states that don't require boats whatsoever for them to do their jobs to maintain security. Whereas there's some that if you're not able to patrol the waterways, you're in trouble. It's just a breeding ground. Some places have issues with forests, some places have issues with deserts, and so on. Now, what we're saying is that as it is already, the police, we don't have enough policemen to cover the entire nation. And yet, we still have loads and loads of unemployed youth who are out there. And the needs, like for instance, in Lagos, with the number of people we have here, we require more policemen. So here's what we're saying. Why don't we put that power a little bit in the hands of the states? The state can determine what it is that they need. Here in Lagos, we need boats for the waterways. We need people we have a lot of gang issues, for instance, here in Lagos. We need people for that as well. So it's important that we put power in their hands.
Well, the counter argument has been that at the end of the day, we'll still see areas of abuse. And the Deputy Senate President said this bill for the creation of state police should also attend to that, where we don't see state governors abusing these institutions as well. But if it happens at the central, why do we think it wouldn't happen?
More than likely it will. So that's not even the issue here, because everything can be abused. In fact, in Nigeria, everything is abused. But what we need to do is put checks and balances in place. Part of that could also be having a federal board, so a federal police force that will form part of the monitoring board. If they notice that any state police is getting out of line or any state governments are going out of line, you put different laws, clauses in the laws that can tackle that. So what I tell people is, look, let's not brainstorm about whether or not we're ready or we're not ready. The truth is the threat has evolved. So right now, the way things are working or the way things are set up, it's currently not working. So instead, why don't we change the conversations to, okay, if indeed we were to have state policing, how can it work? Then you bring up all these other issues. Oh, it's going to be abused. Okay, good. So how can we make sure it's not abused? What can we put in place?
So we should have amendment of the Police Act.
Yes, so I think it needs to be restructured. Now, here's part of the issue. You see the issue with Boko Haram up north in the northeast. Do you know half the time the people who are actually also helping the military fight are what we call civilian joint task force? they're already civilian personnel. We have issues where tribes sometimes have to form their own groups, their own security groups. We call them militias. But really, those came about because if I'm a Fulani man, for instance, one of my cow costs me $600. I don't know if you bought a cow before, but it's 200K. It's more than a lot of people's salaries. This Fulani man has 50 cattle in his possession. And then you have some young boys that come and they steal 5 of them already, just like that. That's 5 times the 200 there. How much is that? About
$1 million.
$1 million, just like that, gone. And he goes and he complains, look, my cattle is gone. You people need to do something about it. And the police is either not there or we can't find it or we don't do anything. What do you think he's going to do next? We've started seeing that all across the country, people are taking security into their own hands simply because the current structure is not completely entirely effective.
And that's what would have prompted the military to get some hunters involved in the fight against Boko Haram. We saw a report where some hunters, about 500 of them, had to take an oath of secrecy to ensure that they fight Boko Haram and not to give away official secrets. Now, let me come to you, Soji.
Okay.
Oh, you want to comment
Yes,
on that?
let's not take the topic away from the issue of the police. The police today is not big. We are not having challenges because of absence of laws. If the Police Act and the Federal Act, the Federal Constitution is adhered to strictly, the structures we have on ground they're already there, but are they being implemented accordingly is a challenge. Today, community policing is there. We have the PCROC, where the people are involved in the policing, such that they know, like you said, crimes are peculiar to locations. And people here know that these people, they know their communities. These people are the problems we have here. They talk to the police. Like we have it, like it's placed in America, the sheriff of the town is known by everybody. There's a stranger in the city, they call the sheriff because everybody is involved. We have that situation here too. But the challenge, I keep on saying, like we said initially, is the leadership that is not altruistic, who wants to take advantage of the system to his or her benefit. But if we remain independent and altruistic and says that we follow the Constitution, the rule of law, the Police Act, the policemen who are continuously being trained, and the people, if they have confidence that this thing is going according to the law, obviously there will be better situation.
Soji, let's get this straight. Are you advocating state policing, or are you saying that the present structure goes?
No, state policing is not out of place. It's not out of place. If it's decentralizing the policing. If you asked me whether at the federal level or at the state level, is good to have it in place.
So would you now recommend that we should have about 3 police systems under this structure, where we have the federal police, we have the state police, as well as the municipal or local government police authorities as well?
But they already exist in quasi forms and pseudo forms.
Isn't that the reason why we have to label and put a peg? Then we can hold them accountable.
Yeah, currently, in those forms they are today, they are being held accountable, but that they have not been called the Nigerian police, or that the laws have not been put into our constitution to say we don't have only one police. If that is done, the states are ready. The militias, the Lagos State Neighborhood Security Watch, and other security watch in other states already exist at the limits of the laws of the states and the constitution bestows on them. So it's just changing them that this is Lagos State Police. If not, we already have them. And it's just for the Constitution to recognize that, and the Nigerian Police Act amended to also accommodate such quasi and pseudo police.
Now, let's also talk about reports of misappropriation of funds now, with reference to the former IGP Ibrahim Idris as well. At the end of the day, funds are meant to be utilized for the proper purposes, but we know that the Nigerian Police Force, according to some people, say it's a federal institution that still remains corrupt and raises issues of concern, because at the end of the day, it's a misaligned target when you're looking at the hopes of the people. What do you also expect of this current Inspector General of Police as well?
I mean, well, look, if you're going to actually help with accountability, in today's world, technology has to be involved. And they have to evolve to that as well. We've all heard now, blockchain may be far all the way still out there for us, but you have things today like blockchain technology that can help you track things as it goes from one stage to the other. If you're able to apply that, in essence, you'll be able to see where money originated from and whose hands it has passed through and where it's going. So we're saying that we're going to keep talking about issues of misappropriation. If we're clearly, or if we're not clear, using technology to be able to trace and track the money, this is always going to continue being a conversation.
So, Joy.
It's been a trend. The IG before the last one, I remember the IG Arase, after he left, there was the issue of allegation of corruption, whether he left some property and some cash. So I don't know if it's becoming a trend in Nigerian police or that it's a dog-eat-dog affair right now. The allegation came up, and we've not heard of anything from the police again investigating their own. We think that either the FCC should step in or the Police Service Commission. But right now we have a disquiet from that angle, and we are thinking that either the men left unceremoniously and have not tendered accounts, and when the accounts are rendered, we no longer become aware that there were such allegations. But it has become a trend, if you ask me, in the last 3-4 IGs, that when one leaves, there's the accusation of the other one that has, and I don't think it's good for the police force itself.
And that's what boils down to transparency at the end of the day.
Thank you very much,
so
Tanwa Ashiru, security consultant. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Ogana Boruwa Soje, it's also been a pleasure speaking with you, and thank you for sharing your thoughts as a management consultant. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where we call it a wrap for this segment. Nigeria decides to take a quick break, and we'll be back with other conversations as
That's
TV.
right. Don't go away.